Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
It is Three Martini Lunch. I am not Greg. My name is Craig filling in, but you have Jim here, as you always do. I don't know why that intro makes me feel like I should be drinking alcohol, but I immediately feel that way. And then, honestly, sometimes the stories you talk about here on this very show, Jim, makes me feel like we should be having shots throughout it. But let's get to the good first to start. It is about Kamala Harris and her political prospects. So I'm already want to do a shot and some of the conversations that might inevitably actually help the opposing side. And this sounds like a gasp if I say it, win a place like California. Could a Republican become the next governor in California? If Harris has her say, apparently, according to some, the answer is maybe. Now, what do you think on this one?
I was going to say, I don't want to overstate it. But by the way, Craig, you characterize it well. Sometimes the martinis are celebratory. Sometimes they're to ease the pain. And sometimes they're to help make the world make sense. None of this seems to be, So maybe it'll seem more sensible if I'm inebriated. So by the end of the summer is the deadline Kamala Harris has reportedly set for herself to decide. Does she want to run for governor of California in 2026? Does she want to run for president again in 2028? Or does she want to do something else with her life? And I had noted a couple of days ago that when she hasn't made a lot of public appearances since the end of last year's election. When she has made speeches, she's mostly talked about national issues, not really state issues. And that, to me, does not indicate someone who has a burning desire to start running the California state government executive branch starting in January. So I'm skeptical that she wants to run, but there's this new poll that just came out that basically said, put before California voters, if you have a choice between Harris and an unnamed Republican, generic Republican, just picture Tim Pawlenty, right?
Nice.
How would you, how'd you vote? And the numbers are, look, is she ahead? Yes. Is she likely to win in this scenario? Yes. Is it a big margin? No. Harris is at 41% in this scenario. The unnamed Republican is at 29%. 16% were undecided, and 14% said they would not vote. So you might be looking at, lower turnout in that scenario. Again, this is only one poll. It is taking place just, a couple weeks ago, a month ago in California. Things could change. But it's not like Kamala Harris needs to build up her name ID. It's not like, particularly in California, right? Like, people know who she is. They know how they feel about her. And 41% for a Democrat in California, that's not a particularly impressive number.
No.
It is. The next question is then you start thinking, okay, is there any Republican out there who could really be a strong challenger to her? Off the top of my head, Rick Caruso ran for mayor last time. Mayor of Los Angeles a couple years ago, ran as an independent. He says he's not a Republican anymore. Wink, wink. He was on the Ronald Reagan Library Board, right? I think we could read between the lines on that one.
He says he's not, though, Jim. I don't know why you doubt him.
Yeah, he may prefer to run for mayor of Los Angeles. Lord knows that city could help it. Kind of foreshadowing our next martini. But I look at this and I kind of wonder if she if you win the governor, but let's say she wins by a smaller margin than usual. Is this the big political comeback, the consolation prize that she was looking for?
I don't know. The biggest question that I have, or the thing I wanted to ask you about, and it sort of mirrors what you're seeing out of New York City right now. In order to try to appeal to the vast majority of Americans, Harris went back on some things that made her widely popular in California. I wonder if sort of the apathy for her candidacy actually comes from the ways in which she separated herself from those far left thoughts compared to what she would have been had she not been thrust into the national stage and tried to have a failed, very short-term run at the, office of president. I wonder if she'd be a more popular candidate in California if she could lean on her history there and the things she said before she tried to reframe them.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern. And Politico had a pretty good story talking to California's big donors out there. And they basically said that, look, when they see her, they're reminded of the 2024 presidential election, and they're reminded of how depressing it was for them. How would it, and let's point out, according to Original Sin and all of these other campaign books, Kamala Harris was shocked on election night that she did not win. Yeah. She was convinced she was going to have the votes in the blue wall states and end up with just, and so one, I think that's not reassuring if you're a Democrat that she was blindsided by,
unaware.
And again, I just keep coming back to the fact that during the California wildfires that destroyed the Pacific Palisades, did so much damage out there. She did one quick walkthrough. The state's got obviously the riots that it's had, with the ICE enforcement, again, foreshadowing our next martini. They have a state budget crisis. Kamala Harris does not come across as someone who's just itching to get into budget fights in Sacramento for the next 4 years.
Sure.
I don't think she's that interested in it. And if you're not interested, you're probably not going to be that good at it.
Well, then, to be honest, though, I would ask this last question about this topic before we move on. What is her political future? I don't think a national stage is going to be friendlier to her than it was so far. Does she have a political future if she's not lowering herself to a role in a California state where she thinks she might have a better shot than anywhere else?
Yeah, I strongly suspect she is waiting for people to tell her, it was just bad luck this time. Democrats have convinced themselves that she ran out of time. In fact, actually, it looked like, there wasn't a huge movement in the polls, but she probably was running stronger in the weeks immediately after her ascension and the Democratic convention and stuff like that. Sure. And she was losing ground as the fall advanced. So if anything, she needed election day sooner, not later. I think she's had her moment in the sun, been found wanting, and that there isn't an easy parallel. But I do keep hearing people saying, so she was the vice president to a president who didn't really respect her very much, lost a bid for the presidency, and now she's going home and running for governor of California. She's on the Richard Nixon plan, which if that's the case, Craig, I look forward to her impeachment and resignation then.
Yeah, that's going to be the best part. I actually look forward to that now, too. All right, that is the good, a very exciting good indeed. We wish the best to Kamala Harris. I don't know if we said that, but I'm going to pretend that we don't.
Well, we'll let her take care of her business.
There it is.
And if you're running a business, you know that every time you miss a call, you're leaving money on the table. When every customer conversation matters, you need a phone system that keeps up and helps you stay connected. And that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that streamlines and scales your customer communications. It works through an app on your phone or computer, so you don't have to carry around 2 phones or use a landline. With OpenPhone, your team can share one number and collaborate on customer calls and texts like a shared inbox. That way, any teammate can pick up right where the last person left off, keeping response times faster than ever. OpenPhone is offering our listeners 20% off for the first 6 months at openphone.com/3ML. That is OPENPHONE.com/3, the numeral 3, not written out, ML. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
One martini down, second martini to go. We move on to the bad with myself, Craig, and Jim talking about this. Karen Bass was asked a question. This was not even on a microphone, but Bill Malugin, the great Fox News reporter that he is, let us know about this via an X post by a producer from Fox News, and she gave an answer that has gone very viral. How do you want to approach this topic, Jim?
Basically, the riots, urban unrest, however you want to characterize, protests at one point, indisputably. Sure. But then they evolved into something that was indisputably much more violent than that. Yeah. Bass was asked this morning if she would be willing to meet with ICE, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and see if there's a deal to be made for city authorities cooperating with them. Bass's response, this is according to Malugin, the Fox News producer, quote, Bass said the only deal is for ICE to go home, and she gave no indication she would be willing to meet with the agency, end quote. Now, the first problem there, Craig, is Go home. They're California. This is a U.S. federal government agency. They are home. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they can't go anywhere else. Yes.
And so I'm really kind of left baffled by this notion that she seems to think that this institution that has nationwide jurisdiction does not have jurisdiction in Los Angeles, and that apparently Los Angeles is not subject to federal immigration law. I think it was Stephen Miller. In my mind, it's the bad Stephen Miller who works in the administration, not the good one who's very funny on Twitter, but your mileage may vary. But Stephen Miller said this is insurrection. There are a lot of times when Miller is overwrought in his, but then when you're basically saying the federal government doesn't have the authority to enforce the laws in my jurisdiction. You're kind of getting into that neighborhood.
Yeah. You're dancing in a weird world.
Yeah. So your thoughts, and then I have just one other nagging conclusion about Karen Bass.
I know the Democratic go-to right now when they're asked a question about ICE specifically, because the crazy guy in New York, as I always refer to him, but Zohran Mamdani, didn't he recently also say that ICE is not welcome in New York City? And that's something where President Trump then reacted by saying, well, if you arrest ICE agents, I'm going to arrest you, which certainly is upping the ante in that discussion there. But to go back to L.A. and Karen Bass, it seems like it's the words that you say, but I doubt it would be the reality of the situation. I think Karen would step aside, maybe not meet with, but certainly not, force ICE to not do their job because she probably understands the rules, even if she doesn't want to pretend to.
Yeah, I believe it was late last year, the mayor of Denver had some similar comment of, if they try to enforce the law, our police forces will be there to meet them, which sounded vaguely Civil War-ish. We're going to have armed, and within a day or two, he kind of realized the ramifications of what he said. He said, never mind, Emily Littella, I did not mean. But when he said, when Mamdani says that ICE is not welcome in New York City, Craig, I don't know about you, the Internal Revenue Service is not welcome in my house. But that doesn't mean they don't have jurisdiction. The ATF is not welcome in a lot of gun owners' houses. But this is not a matter of, are we going to put out some tea and cookies and all that stuff? It's, do they have the authority to enforce the law there? And like them or not, love them or not, no, you don't.
That is so funny. The IRS is also not welcome in my home, and yet they continue to somehow
a lot of
get
Americans, not happy to see them when they show up.
No,
but for those wondering, for any IRS employees listening, you guys are awesome. Please don't audit me. Please don't audit Craig. Hardworking, dedicated American public servants.
Okay, this is a very people who do broadcasting for a living thing. Every time I make a joke about taxes, I also get the sense you just got there. I don't want them to some reason turn on me. I don't want someone to be like, well, what's Craig Collins up to if he's going to make these jokes?
There is a surprising number of right-of-center commentators, talking heads, folks who have gotten audited.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I'd pass an audit, but I'm not. This is not an invitation, and there's no need.
It is not.
All of those were legitimate business expenses. That was research for the work. So,
exactly correct.
So, but just kind of, flipping back to Karen Bass.
Yes,
I've explored this. I've heard this theory that she's getting up there in years, and this isn't just a Joe Biden senility thing. That the mayor of Los Angeles, compared to other mayors, doesn't have a ton of power. The city council actually has more power, and whether she kind of saw this as a kind of a sweet semi-retirement gig, and that she was going to mostly be attending ribbon cuttings and reading to school kids, and that she didn't actually think that being mayor would require actually dealing with crises, which is why she's like, hey, an inauguration of a president in Africa halfway around, well, I'll go to that, sure. What's the city going to need me for 5 days or something?
Right.
And also just when you see statements like this, that perhaps she is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, not recognizing that ICE cannot go home because it is home, and there's and also if you really are upset about this, at minimum, you always look good for taking the meeting. You always look good for sitting down, having and saying, well, we had some disagreements, but nothing bad could come of it unless the attitude of the hard lefty types in California is that even meeting with ICE represents a form of betrayal.
Yeah, no, because you can shape the narrative after the meeting, but you're right. I usually don't see the criticism. How dare you talk to them and tell them you don't agree with them?
They need some education.
Amen, they do.
There you go. And if you need education, let's go to Hillsdale. Is American foreign policy a mystery to you? Is it often treated as an untouchable topic that is only understood by an enlightened few? This view is dangerous because it encourages citizens to ignore a critical aspect of American political life that is our duty to understand. That's why we encourage you to sign up for Hillsdale's free online course, American Foreign Policy, and learn how America should make decisions with a view towards securing equal natural rights of American citizens, as well as analyzing and understanding the matters of war and peace that affect all of us. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses. That's right, I said free. You can learn about the U.S. Constitution, the stories in the book of Genesis, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, or the history of the ancient Christian church with Hillsdale College's free online courses. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll in this course, American Foreign Policy. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll for free.
Yes, now we move on to the crazy. And I have to be honest, I don't think anyone was hurt in this explosion. So I think I'm allowed. I think the rules then apply that I'm allowed to make jokes about this situation. I would like every building moving forward to be blown up the way that this building in California was blown up because of how amazing the video is. Front, back, all across the thing. Jim, tell us what's going on here.
Sure. Well, because this is an audio podcast primarily, We do our little short snippets of video. We can play you the news coverage audio, but I don't know if it gives you the full extent. But nonetheless, let's give it a listen.
We're seeing more explosions right there. And you see the black smoke. So this is not a good situation.
Okay, yeah, you can absolutely see the on the left of your screen. This is catching right now. So we just want to remind you, you're watching the KCRA 3 News at 7.
There we go.
You saw it coming. You saw it coming.
Yeah. We're fine. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was quite intense.
It's the after effect where you're seeing all the fireworks exploding in the air after the whole building went up. That you feel like that's now missing from any demolition video you see in the future.
The first part, that's like a classic Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Bay, something blowing up type thing. But it's the beautiful little sparkles afterwards. And look, the fact that this is happening in early July, Independence Day, just days away. Craig, the two things this reminded me of. First of all, this is happening in YOLO, California. And apparently you only live once. Particularly, you live shorter if you're not careful with explosives and fireworks. So please be careful this holiday coming up. But so it's YOLO, California. And it pretty much is that scene from The Naked Gun come to life. We just needed Frank Drebin fronting people saying, nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here. It's out in California. It's closer to Sacramento than to Los Angeles. Failing that, you just want to look at that. You want to see that. You just want to say, Happy Independence Day. And then put on your shades like Michael, and then walk away in slow motion as it blows up behind you.
Right. Amen. If a building were ever to YOLO, that building YOLO'd is the way I would describe it, because that was every part of it is incredible, as you said. And I wish, I definitively wish, because it was California, that I was there to walk away pretending I didn't notice the explosion behind me, because that would have been the best thing. That's also the most impossible thing to not realize is happening behind you of any explosion ever. But nonetheless, it's a miraculous video. I don't know. And so perfect before the holidays.
People have said, Florida is the home of the world's worst superhero, Florida Man, because of the headlines. It's always like Florida Man caught shoplifting live crabs in his pants or something. It's always, or Florida Man in high-speed chase in golf cart, These are the misadventures of my National Review colleague, Charlie Cook, who's born in Britain, but he's the most Florida man who ever lived. But I kind of feel like news footage from California is always the craziest and always the most spectacular crashes in the high-speed chases. And something like a fireworks factory catching fire and blowing up spectacularly, that's what makes the Golden State Golden State. So we didn't really plan on this, but I feel like as we head into the holiday weekend, we ended up with an all-California-focused edition of the Three Martini Lunch.
Yeah, with a really nice patriotic theme at the end there. And by the way, you mentioned Florida Man. I am just curious, have you ever played the Florida Man game? Are you aware of it?
I don't think so. Is it a bingo type thing? Or?
What is the month and day of your birth?
Coming up very soon, July 5th.
Okay, so what you do to play Florida Man is you put in the month and day of your birth and then Florida Man, and you find out your official Florida Man story, which for you is Florida Man uses alligator to open can of beer.
That feels very plausible, very common.
Yes, that is the top
Alligator
headline.
Alley or Alligator Alcatraz we heard about. I suspect that's how the Crocodile Dundee is looking at them and saying, well played.
That is the top headline with July 5th Florida Man put into the search engine bar of your choice. And there is actually even a video of this man having the alligator open his can of beer just last year in time for the holidays. Thank you, Jim. Fun as always to be here.
It is indeed fun, Craig. And for those listening, we should still listen to us tomorrow and Friday. We have special episodes, pre-taped, that will be enjoyable for your Independence Day weekend. That is Craig Collins, not Greg, filling in for Greg Columbus. And I am Jim Garrity from National Review. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast. Also, thank you dearly for your 5-star ratings. And thanks for the 4-star ratings. 3 or lower, keep it to yourself. Get us on your home devices. All you have to do is say, play 3 Martini Lunch podcast, and the NSA will do the rest. Get all of us on X. Craig is at Radio Craig C. I am at Jim Garrity, and Greg Columbus is at Greg Columbus, shockingly enough. Have a great holiday weekend, and join us throughout the next few days and on Monday for the 3 Martini Lunch.